Good morning. Thank you to AUC for inviting me to address you on the first anniversary of Business Forwards. I wish I could be there in person, sitting on the panel, but it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you about the DNA of Egypt's economy and what needs and the way forward. We can't understate the magnitude of the transformation that has been happening to our economy and its DNA over the past couple of years. We've gone from an economy that 10 years ago was really driven by cheap subsidized energy, by an overvalued currency that made it much easier to import goods and products and distribute them in Egypt, but created very little incentive for Egyptian companies to be competitive and to be exporters. So we've gone from that distorted situation to one where we have the potential today as a country and as an economy to be a lot more competitive. After the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, it's become for a lot of businesses, it's become a lot more competitive to produce goods and services in Egypt, either as import substitutions or for the purpose of exporting them. With energy subsidies being phased out, the emphasis has shifted from energy-consuming industries like cement or fertilizers or steel to a host of other industries that now have the potential to grow in this country, capitalizing on energy efficiency, and without these distortions existing in the economy. So there's a very important shift taking place. The real challenge to unlock that shift, though, and for this country to really start growing, not at 4 or 5 or 6% per year, but at the 7, 8, 9% growth that it really needs year on year on a sustained basis, on a broad basis, i.e. not simply a small part of the economy or a small segment of the population benefiting, but really broad-based growth. The key for all of that to happen is to really maintain this momentum of economic reforms and to shift the focus more and more on promoting, incentivizing the private sector, making Egypt a much easier place to do business in, whether it's for young entrepreneurs starting businesses or for foreign investors looking to come in and build projects in this country, or large local groups like the one I represent, to do important large-scale projects that really move the country forward. And there's been a lot of progress done, in fairness, over the course of the past couple of years on that front as well, between the new investment law, new bankruptcy law. So there is an overhaul of the country's legislation that is taking place, and we've got an extremely competent and dynamic government pushing on that front. But there is so much more that can be done in terms of really signaling to the private sector, whether it's local or whether it's international, whether it's SMEs or whether it's large businesses, that Egypt is open for business, and really drive the message that it ought to be private enterprise that is the key driver of growth in this country. Two more thoughts I want to share with you. Critical to this phase of entrepreneurship and growth and private enterprise is this idea of innovation. We live in a world that is changing at a very, very rapid pace. So when we think of development and when we think of investments and when we think of growth, we can't be thinking in 20th century terms and 20th century industries. We have the opportunity, as other countries have done in Egypt, to really leapfrog some stages of development and to be at the forefront of what's happening in terms of technological advances in certain industries. So rather than trying to catch up, we ought to be doing again what other successful emerging markets have done, which is to see how we can take shortcuts, hacks, leapfrog some stages of development. Critical to that is going to be greater emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship. And I'm really proud to see AUC be at the forefront of that, initially with the AUC Venture Lab, more recently through its innovation hub being established, and really throughout the way AUC approaches education in Egypt. So this is one critical aspect of continuing to transform Egypt's DNA and moving the country forward. The second one, and it's more a word of caution, is to recognize that we don't operate in a vacuum. Egypt is part of a global economy, and we need to recognize that we're now moving into a phase after a number of years of very low interest rates, of a benign global environment, where the global picture is looking more challenging. Capital markets around the world, particularly emerging markets, have gone through a challenging period this past few months. Everybody, the consensus expectation is that interest rates in the US and globally are going to start to rise. So we need to recognize, as a country and as participants in this country's economy, that the global environment in the coming few years might become increasingly challenging. And I think that puts an added onus on Egypt to differentiate itself, to be an attractive investment destination, to do more essentially than it normally would because of this more challenging global environment. I'll leave it at that. I think we live at a time of tremendous opportunities, and I really hope and I believe that this country is at a point where, for the first time in a very, very long time, if we continue to do the right things, we can capitalize on that. Thank you so much.